Welcome back to the Ohio Business Spotlight. I'm Tony Miltenberger with Greg Fay. Today's episode and all of our episodes powered by Greg Fay Insurance. If you're ready to get a quote on how you can save huge savings for your teen driver, you got to call Greg Fay today. He will hook you up. My brother, tell us who is on the podcast today.
Uh, Big Jason. So we got Jason and Jason from BOGG Ministries, and the way I describe them is BOGG Mobile Food Pantry because that's what they do. But we have one of the dynamic duo that powers, talking about powering something that powers BOGG, everything BOGG from startup when they first got started. I'm excited to hear their story. I'm excited because they have some unique skills. A lot of people think, Tony, we've had nonprofits on here before, and I think a lot of people don't equate a nonprofit as being able to contribute to the small business community, but I happen to know everything that these guys have went through, and our audience is going to hear some stuff today that is solid gold material for anybody who's in leadership. So Big J, welcome aboard, brother. So happy to have you.
Thanks for having me, fellas.
Jason, I think it's important to start with origin stories. I think it's especially important to do that when you're entering into something that's not really designed to make a lot of money, right? So it's a lot of our entrepreneurs come on and they're like, I started this so that I could retire, but no one starts a mobile food pantry so that they can retire. So give us a little bit of the history on how did BOGG get started and how did you and Jason look at each other and go, man, we should put this food in a truck and give it away to people.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jason and Jason is an Ohio guy, born and raised here, and I was from Madison, Wisconsin. I'm an Ohio transplant. I moved to Ohio in 2003 at 19 years old. Long story short, I was doing everything a 19-year-old wants to do and probably shouldn't be doing to getting to, sitting here today at 43 with a family and having my hands in a couple different things and 16 years of being a part of a mobile food pantry. Um, so when I came here, I started working on the west side of Dayton at Sugar Creek Packing Company. And for those who are Dayton familiar, the west side of Dayton has always been a little bit rougher,
Sketch?
right? Yeah, rougher, right? Just,
Yeah.
definitely has not been taken care of as by the community as much, over the last 60 years. And but I started there not knowing anything about Dayton. So I moved here on a Sunday. I went to work on Monday on the west side of Dayton, and I realized for the first time in my life I was the minority.
Hmm.
And thankfully leaned into it. I didn't really have any options. I didn't know anyone in Ohio, and it was now or never. It was a reset button. And so 7.5 years on the west side of Dayton, I go from working on the shipping dock to getting myself up in management, making good money, running and having employees beneath me, running different departments. And honestly, I had a couple guys there that invested in me from a young punk kid. And right, they loved me, right? And they treated me, it was tough love, right? Don't get me wrong. It was, if nothing was said to you, you pat yourself on the back on the way home, right? And but what I saw in that time, those 7.5 years that I didn't expect was, right, I was living in Beaver Creek, Ohio. And so I was driving from Beaver Creek, which at the time was booming, mall, lots of revenue, lots of similar looking people, and money was there. And I would drive to the west side of town every day, and I'd work within these communities. And I got to know the communities, and what happens when you get to know people who are different than you. You find out you're not so different,
Hmm.
right? The things that we divide ourselves as are the things that as we get older we recognize don't matter so much, you know. Um, but I would go to the west side of town, and I'd work with people who are very different. Um, Financially, we're very different, or it's a very poor side of town. And I would drive to Beaver Creek, and I just would drive home, and I would think, wow, like how does 20 miles change a community, right? The way I think and feel, right? The way I'm perceived, my knowledge, my safety, all this. And it kind of messed with my head. And so I'll fast forward then to when I meet Jason Barton. So when I first moved here, I went back home. I got myself in some trouble and I had to do community service. And in the midst of that, I came to a church called Southwood Christian Church. And I said, hey, I'm this 20-year-old. I have community service hours. Can I help out? And one person said, yeah, sure, I'll sign your paperwork for you. And I was like, hey, this is great because I don't know where you serve. Where do you do community service? And it was important to me. I grew up in a Catholic church. And it was important to me that regardless if I was volunteering at this church because I had to, that I treated people differently, right? If the church is supposed to be different, then you should be met differently at the door. And they put me on the door. And I'm a 6'7" guy. At the time, I was over 300 plus pounds, 6'7". I had a perm, I was smoking cigarettes in the parking lot, probably hungover from the night before, but I was there, right? And I told myself, I'm going to treat people differently at this door. So it was high-fiving people. It was noticing someone's shoes, saying, hey, nice pair of shoes. And just getting to know people right at point of contact. And in the midst of that, right, I found my faith and I started volunteering at the church. Now I'm volunteering at the church with high school kids. Here comes Jason Barton, this other Jason who now is a part of BOGG. At the time, he's a photographer. And Jason Barton still at, oh man, 48 years old, still doesn't wear shoes unless you tell him to. So here's this bald guy who's a photographer, not wearing shoes, who gets invited to come to the church because of one of his coworkers says, come check this place out. He shows up on a whim. We get to meet each other. And in the midst of that, we work with high school kids and college kids, and we volunteer at the church, right? I fulfill community service. Jason kind of refreshed his faith. And we work with kids for 5 years together. And in the midst of this, towards the end of this 5 years, right, Jason starts saying, I feel like God's telling me to feed people. I don't know what that means, right? Feed people. And I go, okay, cool. There has to be more. Now at the time, right, I'm high up at Sugar Packing Company. I've done very well for myself. I've learned a lot about business. But I have this midst of saying, I want to get into the nonprofit. And so I'm talking to a guy in Las Vegas who wants me to move to Las Vegas and be a part of his nonprofit. So what do? I called Jason one day and I said, hey, after like months of him saying, feed people, feed people, feed people. And I'm going, dude, you don't wear shoes. You have no money. How do you feed people? Where do we go from here, right? So we go down. I say, hey, let's get breakfast. And we go down to Tank's Bar and Grill. RIP Tank's Bar and Grill for all you Dayton, Ohio people. Beautiful spot.
The best brunch in the city of Dayton was Tanks.
Uh-huh. Tanks is missed, right?
Yeah,
And
deeply.
so we go down to Tanks, and I just kind of look at him and I say, hey, I don't think I'm going to Vegas. I don't think I'm quitting my job. But I've heard you talk about this feed people notion for 3 to 6 months. Hey, guess what? I'm just silly enough to do this thing with you. I've learned a lot in Sugar Creek. I've learned a lot about business. I've learned about, and I'm going to leave this corporate world to go do nonprofit with a stranger. So why would I leave a city now that I've spent 7 years with? I love Dayton, Ohio. Let's do something together. And I said, hey, I'll give you a year. 1 year, we'll do this thing together. I'll help get you off your feet. We'll be buddies. But then I'm off to the next journey, right? But I don't know what that is. And so we go amongst, we file paperwork, which we had no idea how to do. I mean, let's be clear, like zero idea how to start a nonprofit. We asked a couple friends that had a little knowledge. The church helped us a little bit in that journey. And so we go to fill out the paperwork. Granted, I'm making really good money at 26 years old. I mean, I'm essentially debt-free outside of a mortgage, doing very well in a job that could be a career job, absolutely. And so we go down to sign the incorporation paperwork to start BOGG. And you know, we say a simple prayer, and I say something like, "Hey God, I have this too good. If you want me here full time, I need you to take my job away because I'm not going to leave it. Why would I?" 3 days later, I get fired. Like wildly out of the blue, you know, like my boss at the time, we're still friends 16 plus 17 plus years later. Um, I go in, I shake the hand of the people who treated me well. I say thank you for 7.5 years. Um, but I'm gonna go start a nonprofit. You know, you should have seen the way someone looks at you when you just lost a career job and you're like, hey, thanks. I'll be fine. I'm gonna go do something that has no paycheck, you know? And there it is. And we so that is how we get the wheels rolling. That is the long version from with a lot of missing pieces, but the fastest way I can tell how we get started. That is the starting line.
Well, let me warn our audience right now. We're obviously going into Joe Rogan time on how long this podcast is going to be. So just heads up, everybody. I'm just kidding. That's a lot to unpack. But here's what I heard. What I heard you say that every business owner, I want to direct business owners and people that want to be business owners. A couple things you said. You said treating people where they're at was important to you. And there's no doubt in my mind that success that you enjoyed at your job that you were at from 19 until 26, treating people where they were at. It didn't matter if they looked like you, it didn't matter where they were from. I'm going to say right here, right now, that we could shut the show down right here, right now, and end with that talking point because that is just huge. It's no doubt the genesis of BOGG and feeding people is all about that right there. I've participated with BOGG now for a long time, and that is something that you guys do. And there's no doubt if you're a business owner out there, listen to what Jason just said. Let me dig into something that I think BOGG does incredibly well because just like Jason Barton said to you, hey, I want to feed people. And you're like, all right, dude, what does that look like? And you guys have done, in fact, you and I talked a little bit about this yesterday when I was sitting in your barber chair. I said to you, I made the statement, you guys message very well. When you see BOGG anywhere, primarily on social media, if you're on social media, you guys message very well. How do you take the complicated nature of trying to communicate what you do to appeal to people to volunteer, to appeal to people that want to financially participate, and to get people to come to your food sites and get food? What has been the trick? Because I think a lot of business owners struggle with messaging. How did you guys decide to message so simply? And what has been the key to being so wildly successful?
Well, I think you just said it there, Greg, right? Simply.
Hmm.
Keep it simple. You know, like for us, right? We have a mission statement. Love people, feed people. That's it. So if it falls in those parameters, which are pretty big parameters, it works, right? And so when you're trying to tell a story, in my opinion, simple, right? Why do we pick up a book? Because there's words or a picture that intrigues us. Why do we pick a movie if we're scrolling through Netflix for a half an hour? Something catches our attention, right? And then there's a little bit, right? So what we do is we are a mobile food pantry, right? And you mentioned that, Greg, right? Because I know I had this long intro to where we get to, but right, BOGG is, and I don't know, Tony's like, all right, we got to make people know what BOGG is, right? So, but we do mobile food pantries, right? And we give away over 1 million pounds of food a year. But when you tell that story, right, we're in Dayton. I think if you want people to be a part of what you're doing, show them what you do,
Mm.
give them as few words as possible. Like you don't have to manipulate people's heartstrings or intellect.
Mm,
Just what do I do? We show up with a truck to parks and schools and neighborhoods, and we set up a mobile food pantry and we give away free food. And when the weather cooperates, we do cookouts. And when there's extra hands available, we do activities with kids. You know, we just do life with people, love people, feed people. So
mm,
when I'm sharing that message, right, I'm not going to exploit the people we're helping because that's just not our vibe. But I'm going to show Greg with a box of groceries in his hand with a smile on his face because here's the deal. Our volunteers come out and they are joyful. They want to help their community. So what do I want to show is you can come back out, give back to your community, right? And as we all know, to give is to get. So I want to show a happy volunteer. I don't need to show the person getting food. Why would I need a kid to go, oh man, I saw you on the phone today getting food at a pantry. Like, why would I do that to a kid? Why would I do that to a parent? That parent goes to work and goes and picks up food, at our pantry. Because let me tell you something, Dayton doesn't have a homeless issue. I'm not saying there's homeless people here, but we have a food insecure issue. We have people who are working and need a little extra, right? And BOGG wants to be that little extra. So what I want to show, here's a volunteer smiling with a box of food. Hey, tonight we were in West Carrollton. We helped 122 families, man.
mm.
Um, thank you, volunteers. Join us
Simple,
sometimes.
simple. You keep it simple, and
Love it.
your messaging's on point.
It's
I just
interesting. I
think
think a lot of leaders struggle with knowing when and how to expand or if to expand. You guys are hitting 7 different cities, you have 8 different collection times, and you do your best to cover most of the Miami Valley. How do you fight the temptation to get into something that you're not and protect yourself from it?
I love the question, right? Because we're all doing it, right? Personally, professionally. Um, so for us, is it needs the fit, right? Like, because I'm gonna tell you right now, we've been offered crazy things. And at least a couple times a year, right? Someone reaches out, right? I get a phone call from Tony, and Tony says, hey, I live in this town, this neighborhood, I go to this church, and we want to help our community. Can you show up? Well, in the early years, we said yes, right? Because you got to get your name out, right? Like, I think that was a big thing for us in the early years is when you know, do what you say, right? Say what you do, right? And a little old school from the 90s, right? You heard that a lot back then. And so for us, it was like, yeah, we have to show up. We have to have people understand what is BOGG, like what does that even mean? What? Love people, feed people. So yeah, we said yes to Tony. But 16 years in, when Tony calls, I say, I've learned, right? Hey, Tony, let's have a meeting. Okay. Is it you, Tony? Does your community have a heart for it? Does your neighborhood have a heart? Does your church? Does your business, right? We have businesses that sponsor events, right? Where, let's say, right? Tony knows Greg Fay, and Greg Fay says, look, I don't need any flash. Hey, it takes 10 grand to do a location for a year. I'll write the check, Tony. And I say, okay, cool, Tony, you helped us put it together, right? Because it costs money, right? Here's the thing, for all the business people, right? Nonprofit, we're the same. I just can't take a $10,000 gain and put it in my pocket at the end of the year. I have to keep it in the organization. We do have staff, but it's that, right? Because I'll sit down and say, hey, Tony, do you have volunteers, right? What do I need to bring to the table, right? I know I have to bring a truck and food and knowledge of putting on a mobile food pantry. What are you bringing to the table? Because right, everyone wants to say I helped do something, but very few want to actually get their hands dirty.
Mhm.
So now it's like, hey, hey, Tony, we need hands, we need dollars. How do we do this thing together, right? Because if we're going to collab and do something together, let's do it together. But it's so there's that now, right? Of knowing what it actually takes for us to commit to a community. And right, and we want to commit to a community for 3 to 5 years because relationships and and change happens over time, right? No one shows up and says, hey, look, we're best friends. And if they do, right, someone's either desperate or lying to themselves in that situation. But so it's knowing what we're capable of, Tony. It's knowing that we can't do this alone. It's knowing that it's okay to say no. Like if you know what you're about and how you do something, staying in your lane, right? I've said this a long time, and it's not a new phrase, right? But stay in your lane, right? Like when we stay in our lane and we do what we do best, right? It's just finding the next person to do that can support you and helping you do what you do best, right? It is a teamwork, right? It is community. And I don't care if you run a big company or a nonprofit, like you don't do any day alone,
Mm.
right? So it's knowing that the right people are on board or we don't do it. And
You
even
really
if we
gotta
get
you
like,
really gotta work a lot on collaboration there is what I'm hearing. There's a ton of in business owners. I'm just trying to point you to the things that Jason is saying that are meaningful. Business owners all the time maybe think that other businesses are in competition with them, but it's the business owners that find a way to collaborate. You have someone that's prepared to write a very large check to you, and there's still some boxes that you require them to check. Collaboration isn't me taking a check from you. Collaboration is you, okay, that's a starting point. Let's go down the list of things, the hands we need, the place we need to be, the period of time. So I love that you said that right there. So in doing BOGG, I think a lot of things. You and I talked about this yesterday. We had a little pre-podcast yesterday, and just because I think there's so much valuable information that you have. So you start a nonprofit, you need help with, getting all the proper documents filed and everything, and you need help with someone that has done something like that before. What is the biggest thing that has jumped up and we'll say jumped out of the bushes at you and you went, man, I did not see that coming right there? And maybe it was something that was going to put you to the mat and maybe put you out of business, or it was something that just slowed you down and you had to figure out, all right, we just really bumped our head here. What have you learned that you could possibly teach a business owner here, Jason, in 7 years?
I'm going to say a really simple thing again, right? We talk simple, but I do think people behind the curtain need to hear this again and again. Don't get in your own way,
Mhm.
right? Check
Mm.
your ego, right? So what has been hard, Greg, right? It's success, right? When we're starting off, right? When you're desperate, when you're hungry, when you don't know if you're going to make payroll, when you're passionate, it's easy, right? Passion is what is drawing people in. Passion is what is selling product. Passion is what is getting people to cheer for you or share your post or like your page, right? Or invite you to the thing. It's success that's the hard part, right? Anytime, right? Right. We started at Tank's Barn Grill saying we wanted to feed people. We started with 4 families. Jason and I in an old station wagon that someone gave us. I mean, there was a day we ran out of gas or the car broke down. And I'm there's a picture of it because I took a picture and I remember Jason being like, "What are you doing?" We're pushing the station wagon across the stoplight in Miamisburg. And I took a picture on a Cricket phone because we had no money, so we used Cricket flip phones, which our board like argued like 10 hours about us spending $30 a month back then. Right. And I take this picture and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, because sometimes like this picture might be worth a story in the future, right? But it was passion. We're pushing a car and it's raining. I'm not upset, but we're feeding 4 families. No one knows what we're doing. No one knows who we are. And right in the fast version of 4 families, right, goes to 8 because their neighbors shared their leftovers. And I was blown away that they shared their leftovers when I knew they had a house full of kids. So then we had to bring food to the neighbors, right? 8 to 16 and 16 to 32. And then I told that story. And someone comes up and says, "Here's a $26,000 check. Go buy a big truck. You can't do this in a broken station wagon." I think we had 6 grand in the bank. Success. Well, Jason and I could have given ourselves paychecks. We were making $0. But again, like you gotta stay focused, right? You gotta keep finding passion, right? Ego and success just crush you. It crushes business partnerships, it crushes all relationships. One of the things that I want to say is Jason and I have been doing this since we've started. We used to do it every week, then it went to every other week. We're currently at every other week. But him and I, as co-founders of this organization, right? He uses his skills here. I use my skills here. Right. That's why he's not here right now. This isn't where he's passionate about. It's not where he's skilled, and he's taking care of something else for BOGG, right? It's 3 o'clock on a work day.
Yeah.
And but we meet. Him and I have gotten together, personal, professional, and anything in between. It has to be laid out there. Because right, you get in your own way. And so I
I'm
would
gonna
say, right, for business people, breathe, remember where you started, humble yourself,
Well, I
you were
love
that guy
Tony. I'm
pushing
not
on the
gonna I'm not gonna ask another question, but I just want to comment on the passion thing because I just listened to Ryan Hawk talk to the guy that does charity water, and I swear I was just listening to him when I listened to you, putting wells up for water and all of these different countries, and he said passion, passion, passion. So Tony, you can take it away there with your last question, and but I just think that's money.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I was curious about is the idea of transparency. I love to do a little research on our guests, and that's kind of the area of the podcast that I bring. Your annual report is available for all to read on your website. In 2025, you guys did 1.4 and some change in services rendered, and you basically broke even. I think you guys were net income was just over $34,000, and that's an incredible income brought in, income spent kind of ratio. How do you develop a culture of transparency when everyone likes to Monday morning quarterback, excuse me, how people do ministry and run nonprofits?
Mm.
Hmm. I'm gonna say you are who you are is gonna come out.
Mm.
I don't care what you do. You can't hide from it, right? You see businesses open a dime a dozen and close, right? Trendy businesses that come out with a boom, with a big marketing budget and the staff and the stories and the executive, and they came from New York City and they're amazing. But there's no passion, there's no honesty, there's no transparency. Like if you stay in your lane and you do what you say you're going to do, then you have to be that, right? If you've ever met me, right? Greg said the barbershop, just to not confuse people, right? I barber 2 days a week. Do you know why I barber 2 days a week? Because I was burnt out after 14 plus years of this. So instead of leaving it, I found a way to 2 days a week I cut hair, and because I told my board, I told people like I was burnt out, I was done. Life, I had a lot of personal life happen that just drained the tank, And so the only thing I can do is show you who we are, right? Like, I'll tell you, there is nothing to hide, right? Because when there's something to hide, right? As soon as you start hiding something, right, it snowballs. We all know this, but businesses do it all the time. Directors, CEOs, right? We lose where we've come from. And I think the hard part is finding time and space to check that, right? So when you put something out there, yeah, it's what it is, right? I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be super transparent. Hour ago, back in our warehouse, talking to the other Jason. Last month, lowest month we've had in years. Around 7 grand last month. Do I hit the panic button? No. Am I messaging big donors? Am I emailing big donors? No. It's all good. Right? Like, right, it's ebbs and flows. And at the end of the day, it does work out, right? There's a big story, but I think so often like we want to panic, right? And we want to change the story. And I just told Jason this, and I want to make sure I say it right, right? But we take short-term truths, right? And we turn them into big time like lies, right? Because, right, you can say, oh man, we had $7,000 last month. Help us. Well, what would I be asking if I said, hey, Tony, will you send me some money? I had a bad month. Is that true? Yeah, it's true. But all I'm really doing is what, telling you what you want to hear for the right now. Everything is fine. We had a bad month. Guess what? In business, you have bad months. In
Yeah.
nonprofits, you have bad months, right? And
Mhm.
it's, you know, and it's all the things. It's economy. It's your passion. It's your energy. It's your team. You know, are you chasing the wrong things, right? So right, when I can show those numbers, right? It's Jason and I. We have a staff of 2. You know, and sometimes it's we're down last month, but guess what? It's gonna bounce. It always has.
Mm.
And but I think that's, again, passion. I think passion, and right, when you're gonna say I'm a nonprofit, you better do what you say, and you know, and say what you do and do what you say. So right, come to a BOGG event 2 days a week. We're out in the community. You can drive by. You will see us. You will see people getting food. Right? Go to social media. You will see a simple post, no sad story, no manipulation. You know, it is what it is. As a society and as a community, we can come together, right? And we can stay in our lanes, and we can bring our strong suits to the to the interstate. It's when we clog it up, right? So if we can't be transparent, what can you be, right? So it's that, you know, it's just
I love it. I love
knowing
it.
who you are and staying true to it, right? And knowing that in hard times, again, look in the mirror. It's probably you, right?
So good. Jason, thank you so much for taking the time today. Normally at the end of the podcast, we ask people for referrals, but instead of doing that, what I'm going to ask our listeners to do is to check out your website, because it really is worth experiencing. It's worth checking out. You can go to the BOGG, B-O-G-G, the BOGG.org, and you can learn more about how you can get involved, about how your company can get involved, and about how you can support this mission that's so important to the Miami Valley, and continue to do the good work of loving people and feeding people. Jason, thank you for the time today, and thank you for the Ohio Business Spotlight. Be sure to hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel, and we'll catch you guys next week.